Hi guys. So I disappeared for a little while. Sorry about that. It's been a busy couple weeks. I am now officially a master's prepared nurse. Well, I guess not officially. I'm waiting on conferral, which is apparently dated for September 15th. That's my school's date to get everybody's degrees conferred. But I finished the program, I finished my classes, I passed everything, and I got all of my clinical hours in. So I feel like I can celebrate a little bit, which means two things. One, it's time to schedule boards. My hair looks like poop today. So it's time to schedule boards. So I made a mistake in one of the last videos I made. I said something about waiting to get my pediatric hours in. That is not a requirement of the ANCC to test. That is a requirement of my school to pass, so I needed them, but I could have scheduled my test sooner, and I wish I would have realized that. But it doesn't matter, because the time will pass anyhow. It's not like I don't have a job, and it gives me more time to study. Do you mind? Do you mind, Mortimer? So I ended up paying for that and submitting everything almost 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago tomorrow. Everything online says that it's been taking like 3 business days to get approval or authorization to test, but I have found, along with my classmates, that that is not the case. In fact, one of my classmates, she had submitted everything pretty early and said they kind of talked her in a circle, and she ended up paying an extra $200 to expedite the process of getting it approved so she could get her authorization to test, so she could schedule, which she did, and she scheduled, and she has since tested and passed, so good for her. But I don't have an extra $200 to throw around, so I'm just gonna wait. And I might call them tomorrow and see where they're at in the process. I tried looking at the website and it just says initial, like where the status is. It just says initial, which I looked up, and it sounds like that's what it says when everything has been submitted and it's processing. But why doesn't it say processing? Morty is my best audience. He hangs on every word. So I did try and click on the apply to test button just to see if I could get more information from the page that it brings up, and it wouldn't even let me get to that page. It says you have an application that is currently in process. So that seems like good news. So that's where we stand with the testing. Am I ready to test? Probably not. Maybe. Like technically, probably. But have I really buckled down and like broken it into sections? No. There's something about scheduling it and having a date on the calendar that seems like it'll whip my butt into shape. But I had 1 week off in between the master's degree ending and the doctorate starting. And I thought I was going to be very productive, which I was like partially productive. I ended up picking up four 12-hour work shifts. So I worked more than full time in my ICU job. And honestly, I was going to try and get in more time, but the census dropped and they didn't need anybody extra. So I basically rotted on the couch for like the last 3 days of that week that they didn't end up needing me, which is not what I had hoped to do with my 1 week off. I had plans of cleaning the house, getting things back to baseline, studying for the exam, and I did none of that. I wallowed in pity about being a little bit broke and having to start another degree in less than a week. So it is what it is. I got in some rest, I guess. So how did things finish up with my last semester? Well, I had to work for every single pediatric hour. I was with a PMHNP that sees across the lifespan, and she does see quite young children. I know of, I think the youngest patient that I saw on her list was maybe 6 years old. So there were definitely some young kids, which was good to experience. A lot of them were very stable and just had problems focusing at school, which is a pretty normal thing. But there were some cases that were a little bit more interesting when you take the background into account. So that was a pretty good experience. However, because I only needed the pediatric hours, I had her schedule and I would go through it every day, and I would show up just for the pediatric hours, which put me in her office She works 4 days a week. The 5th day, sometimes she'll see patients, sometimes it's just an office administration day. So 4 days a week, all semester, I was basically in clinicals, which is unpaid work. Is it education? Yes. Is it necessary? Sure. But it really put a damper on picking up actual work hours. So I would save my actual work hours for either the weekend, or I would do some princess shifts, some 4-hour shifts here and there. And let me tell you, my hours and my paycheck shrunk this past semester. So I am trying to catch up for that. And I just started the doctorate program. I've got 2 classes right now. One is the DNP project, which we started working on last semester in the research class. We developed a research question and we did some training on ethical research through the city modules, and we researched quite a few resources and references to use moving forward in this project. So the first couple weeks are actually resubmitting some things that are already done. It's like week 2, submit your city certification. Well, we literally just did that. It doesn't expire till 2029, so I can just submit the city certification. And if I had to redo it, it's approximately 8 hours of work that needed done. So I'm glad to have that out of the way. And then one of the first couple weeks, the discussion post is like, what's your PICO question? And we already developed that. And it's something that we kind of worked through for a full 8 weeks. So it's a pretty good place to start. So I literally have that. I can back it up in the form of a discussion post, but I have the bread and butter, which is good. Now the second class I'm in is actually part of their MBA track. It is healthcare, finance, and economics. Okay, I'm back. There's an intermission. What was I saying? MBA class, finance and stuff. Kind of interesting. Kind of. I'm afraid once I dig into the meat and potatoes of it, it's going to be like the teacher from Charlie Brown. But I wouldn't mind being a business owner one day or having a practice of my own. So it's probably a good idea to at least understand some of the terminology and what we're looking for and the operational side of healthcare. So the first part of this semester, like I said, I've got the DNP project. It runs the full 16 weeks. It is listed as 1 credit hour and only 50 clinical hours. So that is time that is spent with the preceptor that agreed to take you on, where you plan to implement the project. Discussions count towards hours, like phone calls about meeting up, discussions about their EHR, and looking at, in my case, I'm looking at patient no-show rates. How do they follow their statistics? All of those discussions and paper writing and anything that goes towards the DNP project counts as DNP hours. And we only need 50 for the whole 16 weeks. So that honestly sounds very doable. It's not like the 200 clinical hours a semester for the master's portion, where you had to be there in person, talking with patients, documenting those encounters. This seems more doable. And then the healthcare, finance, and economics, that is 3 credits. So in the syllabus it says expect to do about 16 hours worth of work a week for that type of class. That's pretty average. And that's an 8-week class. And then the 8 weeks following that, we go into translating evidence into practice. That one's listed as a nursing course. So the healthcare, finance, and economics starts with MBA 723. Translating evidence into clinical practice is NURS 708. So I thought it was kind of interesting that we had that one MBA class thrown in. So this is Wednesday of the first week, so the 3rd day of the doctorate program, and we have a Zoom meeting tonight for the DNP class where they talk about expectations. It's basically an orientation type deal because we all come from different states. And this is basically, the program itself is BSN to DNP, but not everybody that was in the cohort went on to get their doctorate. Some stopped at the master's level. So we're starting a new program essentially, and there was no other type of orientation. So hopefully we find out quite a bit in this Zoom meeting. So besides that, I need to pick up more hours at work. I'm going to have to stay on a roll because the money I put back for my degree completion was enough to get me through the master's program, and it did its job, but now it's gone and it's time to keep up with my bills. Plus we have all of the other occurring expenses. The test itself was $400. $395 if you want to be specific, probably tax. And like I said, someone mentioned you could pay an extra $200 to expedite it. Eventually there will be DEA payments to get that, and that's like $800. I don't remember if it's a run of numbers. It's either 777 or 888. So somewhere in that way too close to $1,000 range, and that lasts for 3 years. So I guess let's talk about what the plan is for testing. I plan on taking the ANCC version. There are 2 versions. The ANCC has been around the longest. The other one's only been around a couple of years, and it is not completely recognized in all states, but it is recognized in Ohio. I'm gonna take the original, the OG. Okay, so I just opened up the ANCC certification handbook, and I see this little blurb in here called Expedited processing of certification applications. Expedited review of an application is available for an additional non-refundable fee. Let's click on that. There's a hyperlink in it. I've been sitting here for a couple minutes. It's not loading. It must be ashamed of itself. Oh, there we go. $200. Yep, that's right. To shorten normal processing time to 3 business days, which is what it said their normal processing time was, complete the certification expedite review request form and include non-refundable $200 processing fee. Nope, I'll wait. The longer I have to wait, I guess the more time I have to actually study. Speaking of studying, I decided to go with the Georgette's PMHNP review courses. She does like 4 or 5 modules and then a last minute review. I did do all of them already. They say sometimes to take the last minute review much closer to your actual test. But I'm a curious girly and I wanted to know what information was in there. And it was good information. She references the Purple Book quite a bit. You can see mine's very tore up. In fact, I'm missing some pages. I think that might be from the cat. I love books, but they are not safe in my house. So she references the Purple Book a lot. When she goes over a subject, she will have where you can find it in the Purple Book and the important information to take away from it. Signing up for her review course, you can also get access to her question bank, which is a resource that I haven't used a ton. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the way it's set up, but the questions are good, and I've heard they're very close to what we'll actually see on the test. So I need to just go ahead and get through it anyhow. So the test is set up in domains. There are 5 domains. The first one is considered scientific foundation. It is 22% of the test, and there are 33 questions about that. And it looks like that's broken down into knowledge and skill, which is advanced pathophysiology, neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, advanced physical assessment. So 33 questions on that. And honestly, that one I'm pretty confident in. And then domain 2 is advanced practice skills, which includes clinical interviewing, motivational interviewing, health promotion, disease prevention, mental health screening tools and selection, like the PHQ-9, the GAD-7, the Vanderbilt ADHD scoring, the mental status exam, psychiatric emergency management, and I don't know if I mentioned advanced practice skills. That is worth 27% of the test. Or it is 27% of the test, and it's 41 questions. Again, that one I feel pretty okay with. And then we have diagnosis and treatment. That's 22% of the test, which is 33 questions. That is about DSM-5 diagnostic criteria, complementary and alternative treatments. Those I need to dig into a little bit more because some of them are concepts that I have never worked with. Like the concept of hot and cold foods working on your body in certain ways. So if you're sick with a sinus infection, maybe you want hot foods because of some kind of alternative medicine reasoning. So I need to dig into that. Domain 3 also consists of laboratory test selection, interpretation, diagnosis, differentials, evidence-based practice like medication dosing, off-label use of medications. Domain 4 is psychotherapy and related theories. It's 11% of the test and 17 questions. This one I could also probably work on a little bit more because there are just so many and you have to know a little bit of each, it seems like, because there's like when I do practice questions, something will pop up and I'm like, I've never even heard of this guy. So that includes psychotherapy principles like CBT, humanistic therapies, interpersonal therapies, change theories like the trans-theoretical model and Lewin's change theory, developmental theories, family theories, and then development of the therapeutic alliance, like empathy, boundaries, psychotherapy. That part I'm confident in, but the actual theories and who developed them and what they consist of, I need to crack down on a little bit. And then finally, domain 5 is ethics, legal principles, and cultural care. It is 17% of the test and 26 questions. This one I'm 50-50 on. I think I'm decent at cultural care, but again, the ethics and legal ethics, I feel like that's typically pretty straightforward, but the legal principles, sometimes they're based on actual cases and they're named after the cases. So if you don't know what the Tarasoff case involved, there may be no words that help you decipher what that means because it's the name of the case. Tarasoff versus Regents of the University of California. And that one in particular is the case that brings about the duty to warn. The fact that if somebody says that they want to hurt somebody, even if there's no plan, it is your duty to warn the person that they may be in danger. So there's a handful of cases like that you need to know by name and what that means in practice. It says that it incorporates knowledge and skill, so knowledge of the Bill of Rights, informed consent, treatment options, scope of confidentiality, release of information, duty to warn, the ANA scope and standards of practice. And then from a skill component, cultural and spiritual competence, equity, diversity, inclusion, ethics and clinical decision making, and patient advocacy. So those are the 5 domains of the test. I feel confident about most of them, but I know my weak spots and I'm working on them. Am I working as hard as I should be? Probably not. The purple book, I've only cracked a handful of times, and initially I was trying to read it front to back. And honestly, it starts with a lot of the theories. My study session turned into a nap. So I haven't made it very far into the book, but I do have my notes from the Georgette's review where I'll go back and go to those specific chapters and go through everything again. I'm also using the Pocket Prep study guide, which is question bank material, essentially. There's a question of the day, and then there are random 10 question tests, and then you can have larger tests if you want. And it gives you a decent rationale with each question, so it's a pretty good resource. But I've also been watching on YouTube Fitzgerald, which is one of the companies that does certification reviews. They have some PMHNP specific case studies and questions that they go through. They're just short little 7-8 minute segments about one specific question, but it's nice to listen to somebody go through it because the person who's reading it, it's not robotic, it's not written down, it's like, this is how you read that question, this is what I think about that question, this is why this is right and these are wrong, and it's a lot easier to kind of understand their thought process. Some of my classmates used Fitzgerald to study for their test, and it sounds like it was a good resource as well. I've heard a lot of good things about Georgette's, and they're both pretty expensive, so I cannot find it in myself to spend another $700-800 on another review course when I already went through one. So I'm just going to have to trust myself that I learned what I needed from Georgette's and can prepare myself with practice questions and practice tests and just have a little faith that I retained something during all of this. I'll have to reach out to my preceptor sometime so I can at least start working on the basics of what his company uses and the type of patients they see and how many they see and how many providers, start getting all my numbers down. So I need to do that. We'll call it next week. It's Wednesday. I'm not going to put that on him at the end of this week. Besides, we're just doing orientation tonight, so I'll reach out to him next week. Plus, gosh, this is a long story. I was out of compliance with my TB Quant. There are certain things that you have to stay in compliance in order to do clinicals, even if those clinicals aren't necessarily patient-facing, and one is the TB Quant test. So I just got that drawn today, and I think today is actually when it is out of compliance. I tried doing it a couple weeks ago. The place that I went, which is where I've had it drawn before, kind of like a minute clinic type deal, they no longer have their nursing staff there. They only have a provider there, so they don't draw the labs there anymore. He said, I can order it and I can send you to this one place. They fill up quick. It might take a little while. Also, it's popping up that your insurance isn't covering it. It'll be like over $100 for me to order the test, and then it will be over $200 for you to have it drawn. So it'll be like $300 to get a TB Quant. I'm like, absolutely not. Well, it turns out my husband's company, I knew my husband's company was going through a merger/buyout, but there are multiple HR people integrating into one business now, and somebody dropped a ball somewhere and did not pay the insurance, the health insurance. All of the employers did. It came out of their paychecks automatically, but the company did not, and we lost coverage for over a month. So apparently when I tried getting my TB quant drawn, it was during that period where I did not have coverage, and that's why it was so expensive. So I had to reschedule it, and I just thought, you know what, it's a pretty quick turnaround for that test. I'll get it in as soon as possible, and it shouldn't put any kind of stop to getting my clinical time in. But that was stressful. What do you mean we don't have health insurance right now? So I need to get a hold of my preceptor. I've got one discussion post due tonight. It's doable. It's for the finance class, and we have to read a little overview of the Affordable Care Act and write about that. This is where I start to say it doesn't sound like the most exciting thing ever, but it's doable and I can get it done. And then we have the orientation Zoom meeting tonight at like 6 o'clock, 6:15, which is about 3.5 hours from now. And then, because I kind of have the motivation, probably because I'm up and dressed and have a little bit of makeup on, I need to clean everything. You can see I have all of my bags here from the last couple semesters. That is a purse that I would use occasionally. That is a bag that I started using when I was doing clinicals. And then I found out that a DSM and a Stahl's Prescriber's Guide, too much for that bag, too heavy. So then I got a roller bag. And then that one is my farm bag. It's got everything I need to give annual vaccines, treat injuries. And that's my little first aid bag for the farm. And then weights, because sometimes in between all of this I work out. So those things need put away because I don't foresee using those right now. I've got books everywhere piled up. I literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books, a couple spiral notebooks, and a couple binders just sitting on my desk right now. And they're not things I'm using, so I need to put them away. My bookshelves are just packed. So I'm gonna have to figure out what I can put into like a storage situation and what I need to keep out. So I would like to at least get my office kind of clean to start this semester. It's been weighing on me. I've got stuff everywhere. The house, of course, needs clean too. Hubby's been helping keep up with that a bit, but he doesn't touch the bathroom ever. So the toilet needs cleaned, shower needs cleaned. Just all that stuff that allows you to relax a little bit more. That's just always in the back of my mind. So if I can just get some of those things crossed off my list, I've really been thinking about my office a lot. So I think I'll start there. I've got, like I said, a couple hours before it's time for that meeting. My discussion post, it's only worth 12 points. I'll throw that together tonight. All right, I think that's enough rambling for now. Let me know if there's anything that you're interested in knowing about. Maybe we'll go through some of the study guides, study techniques for the exam, or maybe certain things that I found helpful that aren't common knowledge, automatic knowledge for me. So maybe we'll kind of dig into that a little bit. I can't imagine just hearing updates of the fact that I'm in class right now is very helpful. But it's been so long since I put a video out that I thought, you know what, I've got a little bit of time. Let's get something going. So good luck to everybody who's starting school this fall or continuing school this fall. Let me hear about what you got going on. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye.